Right. First up, my question to you is that Macron has, during his meet with Trump, has said that the Russia-Ukraine war could end within weeks with, of course, cover security guarantees for Ukraine. And Trump has also said that Putin will accept the European peacekeepers in post-ceasefire Ukraine. What are you gauging? How optimistic are you regarding a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine?
Well, first, I was astonished yesterday evening listening to these news from Washington from the talks between Trump and Macron. Surprise, yes. Second, the question is, what does it mean, peace? I think they are speaking about a ceasefire as a first step, and then in the light of a ceasefire to talk about the possibility of European forces inside Ukraine. But for the moment, I remain skeptical. Because any peace agreement needs not a capitulation of the Ukrainian side. Any peace agreement needs a fair treatment of both sides. My hope had been that Trump would try to reach from the Russian side the withdrawal of Russian troops from the territory of Ukraine, from the recognized territory of Ukraine, perhaps the price neutrality, perhaps price international guarantees, not becoming a member of NATO nor of EU. I thought this could be potentially a certain price, but up till now, I don't see this. I'm astonished at the same time to listen that Putin favors U.S. investment in rare minerals, earths in Ukraine. Who will protect American companies being there? Americans themselves or Russian forces? Who will be the protectors? I've doubts about really the seriousness till now of these plans. On the other hand, it's clear we need a ceasefire. We need an end of these terrible fights now lasting for the last 3 years. We have to stop the Russian side, yes, but it's clear the Ukraine can only come to peace once the territory is really settled and once the territory is really assured by an international agreement, then this country can live in peace, not otherwise.
Right, Mr. Bitterlich, a lot of questions unanswered there because we perhaps don't know how will the European mission look like if they perhaps do send out the peacekeepers in Ukraine. We are seeing that the priority right now is to stop the fighting as soon as possible. Do you think that there is a risk of Ukraine perhaps being pressured into a settlement which does not address its long-term security guarantees, something which Zelensky has been harping and asserting on for quite some time?
I fear this. You are expressing exactly my fears. I see Ukraine now under extreme pressure from the US, on the other hand from the Russian side by the air attacks. The Europeans are still a bit what I call astonished at this situation. The Brits, the French would like to say to play a certain role to stabilize it, to help the Ukraine as far as they can. But without the US, the European role is not decisive at all. Therefore, I remain skeptical for the moment, but the pressure will be there. And when I read that Zelensky will go in the next days to Washington to make its first signature or its paragraph under the contracts on the exploitation of minerals in the Ukraine, well, my fear is a bit raising even. But please look what the Americans speak about Zelensky as a dictator without elections. He can't do elections. We are not under martial law. And Putin is speaking at the same time, calling Zelensky as a toxic figure. And there you see it's the attempt of an agreement of two powers. The Russians are happy to be treated on an equal footing with the US again. please, the rest of the world, be aware what this could mean for you altogether.
Right, Mr. Bitterich, there's also no consensus of Ukraine joining NATO. Just a few days back, he said that he would trade his presidency for Ukraine to be a NATO rather. My question to you is that that the ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine right now, and like you mentioned, there's growing pressure. How can perhaps Europe and US ensure that the ceasefire will be substantial and not fragile, and that Russia will not violate the ceasefire, something which also happened during the Minsk agreement in 2014?
Well, Minsk agreement, there has been a problem on both sides, on the Russian side and on the Ukrainian side. The Europeans have never been pushing Minsk till a real agreement. And I hope at least a ceasefire is always useful if you want. But such a ceasefire would not lead to a situation of even more insecure situation in the Ukraine especially. Because there will be one role of the Europeans at the end of the day. It's who will pay for the reconstruction of the Ukraine, the Europeans. This is the expectation of Trump and of Putin on the other side. Perhaps the Chinese would play a certain role within this game. Let's see. But frankly spoken, my hope had been that the aim should be the re-establishment of the territorial integrity of Ukraine. The price could have been neutrality. The price could have been abstention from any NATO accession, abstention from any EU accession. This could have been, for me, the price. Even a special status of the Crimea. But what I see till today is a consecration of a Russian occupation of 20% of the territory of Ukraine, despite of the recognitions of 91. My fear has always been, in reality, the Ukraine case is an agreement to disagree between Moscow and the West. And I feel here reassured to some extent by this view.
Right, Mr. Bitterlich, thank you so much for joining us on WION and sharing your insights with us.
Pleasure as always. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you very much. Anybody want to ask a question or two? Is that a foolish question?